That's all right. Thank you, Brad. It is 7 o'clock, so we will call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you. All right, and the the next item on our list is the public comment portion. Our first public comment portion for the night. So I see we have a nice lot of people here from the public. That's wonderful. And if you'd like to make a comment at this time, you can just raise your hand and we'll recognize it. All right, Dan Russell.
I'll pick it up. I got two items. Just for the record, not necessarily some about tonight, I think, but some not. A few weeks ago, I had a conversation with Supervisor Kennedy. I expressed my concerns about the open space ordinance as presented, which really should be considered a clustered housing development ordinance. I told her I was concerned the ordinance would allow development in every residential part of the township. And since it allows private roads, large scale development can go on regardless of how much road frontage is available. Told her the township is opening itself up for lawsuits because the ordinance allows developers to put developments in which are inconsistent with surrounding areas because the ordinance use isn't limited to be near more densely packed housing like the urban area next to Chelsea. As Penny said, the master plan would ensure the open space ordinance would not be used where it wasn't supposed to. And I don't see how the master plan would protect our community from an open space development going where it shouldn't. The ordinance as written is a bit broad, vague, and generous. We're going from no ordinance to literally giving away the farm. During open discussion and prior to voting, I'd like Ms. Kennedy to explain the master plan, how the master plan would protect our communities from the open space ordinance being used inappropriately, or add verbiage to the ordinance to address this concern. That's item one. Item two is a few meetings back during open discussion, the question was brought up why Sylvan Township promotes Sioux Township in Michigan. I have some personal experience and insight on this one, and I also shared this with Ms. Kennedy during our discussion. A few years back, my wife and I learned about the Finney proposed rezoning only 7 days before the planning commission was meeting to vote. My wife came to the township to ask for materials related to the rezoning. And I'm not sure how I or several neighbors didn't get the customary letter regarding the rezoning request, but we didn't. When she got here, she met with the zoning administrator, Carol Kaniski, for the first time, who told my wife, and I quote, "I don't know why you're here. This is going through and there's nothing you can do to stop it." My wife and I were upset that an employee of this township would say that to a resident. Both that an employee would chastise a resident for voicing opposition to a development and for thinking they had the authority to push it further. Eventually, another township employee did step up and get the information requested. This was only the beginning of the inappropriate behavior I witnessed from the zoning administrator. The Finney proposed rezoning was the first of 4 developments proposed that Ms. Kaniski wrote staff reports and said they were consistent with the master plan. All 4 development proposals were turned down when it was proven they were inconsistent with the master plan. This is not only costing taxpayers a lot of legal fees, but also wages as planning commission and boards go in circles try to counter Ms. Kaniski, telling developers that the projects fit the master plan when they clearly don't. It's also wasting applicants' time and money as they spend thousands on engineering reviews and site plans. Mr. Kern was particularly angry when his tow yard was finally denied after it was clear the outdoor storage was not allowed in a mixed-use area, saying he had spent thousands of dollars going down the rabbit hole. When Finney sued the township, a lot of his lawsuit was based on Ms. Kaniski's staff report, which said rezoning fit the master plan. I don't hear anyone saying they don't want any development in this township. What I'm hearing is they want managed development, which doesn't undermine our communities and ruin the rural character of the township. It's clear to me Ms. Kaniski is pushing an agenda for development in Sylvan Township. She has no authority to do this, and it's costing the taxpayers money. But it's also clear that the majority of the residents don't want this kind of development that she's pushing. Why is the board allowing this unethical behavior to continue, and what is the board going to do to stop it? End of.
Thank you, Dan. Yes.
My name is Carl Olson. I'm a resident in Sylvan Township. I don't think I can add much more to what Dan said, But I would like my sentiments known that I also agree with the majority of what you just said. Once we start, allowing these, avenues for clustered homes, there's no going back. It won't go, we do lose our rural character of our township. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Patrick.
I guess I have a couple comments too. Man, this agenda is long. I don't know what I should comment on, but of course, the open space area. A lot has been said about it. The best way that I found to sum this up, because we've been talking about land preservation recently, we even had an expert come in here, Barry Lonick, last month. And I think we should take the long view. The 20, 30, or 40-year view. And think about all of the favorite parcels of land that we have in Sylvan Township, many of which are undeveloped right now. What is going to happen to each one of those parcels in 30 years, let's say? With a number. Is that parcel going to be 100% developed and stuff spread out all over the place? That's a possibility. Is it going to be 50% developed because somebody came and used the open space ordinance? That's what it gives you. It gives you 50% developed. Or is it going to be 0% developed, either because the landowner doesn't want to develop it, the real estate market crashes, or we have a purchase and development rights program, that's very long. That's a very viable program. All three of those are possibilities. I don't believe that getting the properties, the parcels spread out all over the lot is the best solution. That's my preference. At least I would like to be able to exercise the option of preserving 50% of it before I sell the land and somebody else develops the whole thing, maybe 20 years from now, who knows, right? I also don't believe that we're going to be able to protect 100% of our land. I don't think that's an alternative down the road. I think we'll be able to protect 100% of some parcels with a PDR, if the voters even vote for it, I don't know. So that's how I look at the open space ordinance. When I look through that lens, and as the lens of a landowner who actually wants to do this too, not a landowner who has to do it. I could pursue a different route too. But I think the open space ordinance actually doesn't go far enough. Personally, I think that it has a lot of things in there, a lot of guidelines that are left to the discretion of the planning commission, which are probably legally unenforceable, but they cloud the issue. So that's why I circulated an alternate draft. I have no expectation anybody's going to approve my alternate draft. The planning commission did approve one piece of it, which I'm happy to see that it's something got good. Maybe I've used up all my time, but I also want to comment a little bit about the solar thing too. I'm so glad we're working on the solar ordinance, but I just do not understand the reason why we have to ban systems of more than 30 panels as a starting point. Well, what's wrong with the status quo, and how long is it going to take to be ordinance in place? I just put up 28 panels on my house, which is really close to that limit. And I know there's some legal answer that's really complicated, but I'm not sure if I believe it, because I've gone through this twice now. I have 2 homes with solar on it. I completely support solar. I'm not a zealot about it. I'm not saying everybody has to go renewable energy. I'm just saying it should be an option for people. And it's already limited by the Michigan Public Service Commission. You can only put as much solar on your house or on your property residentially as meets your need, at least 100% of your needs. And nobody can exploit the current situation on residential property to put a giant solar farm on property. It just can't happen. So I'm thinking that should be considered, and how serious is this issue, and why is, really in light of that, do we really need to put a limit on this while we're working on the ordinance? So many other things. I'm probably went over my time. I did some other people, but thank you.
You're welcome. I saw Scott, I think, in the back, and then we'll go over here. Thank you.
Good evening. Want to take the first one, which is probably been gone forever since we had mid-year elections. So I'd like to congratulate you both on being elected to office, and particularly Ms. Kennedy now can officially say that she is the first elected supervisor, female supervisor. So,
Thank you for what that's worth.
anyways, that being said, not only the two of you coming into office, kind of new, I'm hoping that you have goals. I've mentioned it before. I hope the whole entire board has goals. You know, not limiting what we might be able to do as a township. Couple of irritating things that I found over the last, couple of years actually, is that our continued lack of a capital improvement plan that's been called on by some of our accountants or whoever. The question that we should incorporate one, and it's still not done. I think that should be looked into. We still don't have a Parks and Rec department that I've always advocated. And with that, we can't take advantage of any grants from the state, which are becoming considerable, $300,000-400,000 grants that could help the township in that area, even with all these trails that we have going on. The other thing that I find disconcerting, I've been reading a lot of the minutes over the last couple of weeks in preparation. I wish that the board would incorporate a new way to bring amendments to the people. I mean, look at that table right now. We've got 45 things going on, but over the last year, I've sat here in a few meetings and we talked for 10-20 minutes on an item. And then all of a sudden it's a take a vote. Oh, we can't take a vote. Oh, let's table it. And that is a waste of time and money. And so I thought, well, what if you all incorporated a method that the first one that you have a new item, you only can discuss it. The second month, you make sure that all the legal details are worked out there. And then it's voted on in the third month. Now, if it's a pressing issue, it can be voted on the second one, but only if it gets a unanimous vote by everybody. If it has one dissenting vote because of lack of some information, it gets automatically kicked to the third month. So I think you work out a lot of wrinkles on a lot of the BS that comes before us that you're not prepared to do anything about. I think that Madam Supervisor, you as a CEO can go a long way to moving those issues like that too, by taking a firmer hand in control of what the board is doing and who's bringing what to the floor on the agenda. I also would like to mention that, again, in reading some of the minutes, this is of a personal nature, and I'm sorry, but I'll go back to you, Rod, on the issue of voting on the proposed plans for Pierce Lake Road, and going over a document from the MTA and zoning. It says here clearly that in order to maintain public trust, ensure fairness, it's critical to remove yourself from the hearing and decision process if you are in reality quite likely to be in conflict of interest in situation. This can occur if a matter before you involves property you own, lease, or rent, property owned by a relative or boss. I think that property is a relative, is an in-law, and I think it shows poorly to the public, the optics are bad, and on the board, for the board to allow that to happen. If you want to absolve yourself of that, tell him he does it as his own peril, that's fine, but that's between you. The other thing that I'd like to address that I've read, and this involves our zoning administrator. I've heard that, Carol does not really particularly care to want to do zoning details anymore in some of the meetings. And that she is the zoning planner. And, I was here as supervisor when Carol was hired. And she was hired as zoning enforcement. Because Carl Schwartz was charging us about $150 an hour, we allowed Carol to do some planning because it was going to be done at a lesser rate. That does not mean that her job is now just planning. Her job description was as zoning enforcement officer. So that's just another one. The third thing I'd like to say in closing also is I looked through and saw some of the other motions for tonight. So specifically on the appointment of a new planning member of the planning board. A couple of months ago, we lost a member of planning. And I know that Mr. Russell had an interest in that job. Mr. Camp is got, I don't know Mr. Camp, it could be a wonderful man. But I don't believe I've ever seen him at a meeting. I don't know that he's been to any more than 1 or 2 meetings. Mr. Russell has proven himself to be a wonderful member of the community, attending many of those meetings and these meetings. And I think that Mr. Camp's nomination should be withdrawn, and I think Mr. Russell here should be appointed as the next member of the planning commission. With the support of the board, as you know, supervisor, you can appoint somebody, but it's with their approval. I'm hoping that maybe people will look kindly on him, members of the he deserves it, based on somebody who, no, I don't know if he's here now, Mr. Camp. Is he? Is he here tonight?
He is actually on the Zoom meeting right now.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I don't know that like I say, ever met him, ever seen him. He only probably been at a couple meetings, but like I say, he could be a nice guy, but there's the man who deserves it right there.
thank you for your comment. Gentleman with that, thank you.
Evening, Mike Van Gort, resident on Bruce Run Drive. 3 minutes, we'll touch briefly on 3 things. I'd like to kind of build a couple of things on what Patrick was talking about. Open space preservation, my understanding of reading everything is that it doesn't allow you to increase the density of what would be allowed normally under the zoning, but it allows you to group things in the property. So, for example, this is a parcel, then we have all these little house lots, all ducks in a row. It allows you to gather these chairs and move them over here and gather those chairs, congregate those over there and group the rest over there, allowing you to have more open space. And I would love to be, corrected if that assessment is wrong, but for lack of anything better, that's my understanding and example of what that ordinance does. And I am in favor of it because it does, I think it does allow us to continue development, but do it in a way that is sensitive to the open space that we have all, and I expressed a desire to maintain over the past year and a half of things coming before planning commission. Solar panels, I, like Patrick, have also installed and ran my home recently. I think there needs to be some sort of sunset clause for this temporary amendment. Who knows how long that ordinance is going to take to get in place. So I would consider, 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, whatever you want to pick as a sunset clause for that. It doesn't happen at that point in time. And also urge you to consider grandfathering anybody else who may exceed that already. My house is approaching 30 years old, and I expect my furnace is going to go soon. So I would like to do, heat pumps, and that would be put on my system and go on and increase my system. Final thing is the amendment for the Westchester Farm residential project. I would like to have a better understanding of how utilities are going to be assessed and paid for by the township. As far as reimbursement for an increase in utility size, I'm a little unclear as far as how that is going to work. I know the residents, are already paying for the water tower still. I
And I just don't want this to be one of those type of, events. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fedor. Yes, Renee?
Renee Johnson, resident on Spruce Run Drive. I have, 3 comments. First one, I have brought up at 2 previous meetings, one board meeting, one planning commission meeting. I have emailed Kathleen 3 times since early October. I copied Attorney Paul the last 2 times. The only response I received was the week before the election, when Kathleen said she had been ill and was catching up on emails. I have heard nothing since then. So I'll bring it up again now. With regards to the minutes of the August 9th board meeting, in which it is stated that a conversation was overheard in which an unnamed staff member was overheard saying they spoke with a local commercial real estate agent who was upset about Sylvan's stance on development. This unnamed staff member stated that they were going to reach out to the agent so as to not lose out on development. And also refer to the residents as NIMBYs. So here again are my questions. Who is this unnamed staff member? The residents have a right to know when our officials are behaving badly. This person clearly is soliciting development and should not be involved in the master plan. At the very least, I'm not sure they should still be a township employee. They also have animosity toward the residents, calling them NIMBYs. I asked for Mr. Paul's opinion on it as well. And I'd like to know what's being done about this. You stated that transparency is important. Definitely in your candidate Q&A prior to the election. This is the perfect time to be transparent. Here are my questions. Who was it? What are Mr. Paul's opinions on this and what is being done? I'm willing to pause on comments in case you would care to answer right now.
I would really love to, but I think I'm gonna have to circle back to this at the end because public comment is time for people to give comments to us. I would really love to, but sometimes when that happens, then public comment is morphs into something that is not intended to be. But I appreciate it, and I would love to circle back to this at the end of the meeting.
Okay, my second comment is the Westchester consent judgment situation. I'm also very confused about that whole situation. I'm confused because it looks like there are legal documents drawn up already in that packet. Like, I would have thought there would have been some discussion or something, or maybe I missed it. But that kind of surprised me, but also I don't understand. It sounds like the developer would pay for the upgraded pipe size, and then we would reimburse them for that cost. Are we compelled to do that? This judgment in 2011, like they can just come back 10 years later and say, oh, we want to add this, and we just have to pay for it. And then 5 years from now, they're going to want 250 more condos somewhere, and we're just going to pay for it. That doesn't seem right. So I'm hoping I'm reading that wrong and thinking on that, but we're very confused. My last comment is the creation of the administrative ordinance for the planning commission. I'm wondering what would we consider a small project, and who determines that if it's going to be allowed that a couple of people can make decisions. I'd like to have that clarified.
Right, thanks, Renee. I think I saw you next, but then I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Lois Wagner, I'm a resident. I have a question about the appointment of someone to the planning commission. I wondered if it could be elucidated what the requirements are for someone to be appointed. Are they required to be a resident of the township and different things like that? What you consider when you make the appointment? I'd like to hear about that. And secondly, I also am confused about the thing with Westchester and would really like history and education about this other proposal that's, on the agenda for tonight. I don't understand it, I don't understand the history, and it would really be helpful to get that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your patience.
Kevin Johnson, also a resident of Spruce Run Drive. I've learned that procrastination sometimes helps because most of my comments have been addressed, so I've waited. But I want to second Dan's comments about our zoning supervisor. I think we have to really take, kind of an introspective look here. The tail cannot be wagging the dog. We need to have people performing in their role appropriately, not overstepping it. I second Scott's comments about Dan. I think Dan has been at almost every meeting I've been to, probably, it's been more. He's made great comments. He seems to have a very balanced approach. I think he would work well with others on the board. And I don't know Mr. Camp either. Sounds like he's zooming tonight, but I would like a reason why Dan's candidacy or nomination wasn't moved forward. I would recommend we go back to that. And I would support his nomination to the planning commission. I wasn't going to talk about conflict of interest, but Kathleen, you and I have communicated directly before on this issue. It's critical. I have a background, I know a lot about conflict of interest. A family situation is a direct conflict of interest. There's no question about that. You talked about the legal defensibility of a conflict versus the ethical defensibility of a conflict. Those things have to be separate. Our attorney can counsel us on both legal and ethical behaviors, and I think we should pursue both. The city of Chelsea has had almost an exact situation. So if you go back to their notes recently, I can pull the notes for you. Exact same situation. The board member recused themselves for the vote on that issue. There are other ways to handle it. It's handleable and it should be done 100% of it. Moving forward, it's a lesson learned. It comes up again. I would hope it would be handled better. And then I go back to Renee's comment about someone in the township office calling residents NIMBY. Right away, we have a problem that has to be dealt with before we go into the master plan discussions. We don't want anybody thinking of us as NIMBY, and then going into the master planning process with that sort of mentality. It's a bad perspective. So I would, again, we know who it is. Somebody on this board knows who it is. We have time tonight. Let's just get it out there. Let's get it in the minutes. Let's know who it is so we can address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend.
Can I speak on some other topics that I haven't spoken on before? Everybody seems to have a very long list.
If you could just quickly touch on some, Patrick, or someone else wanted to give you their time.
Just on the issue with the comment being overheard. Everybody who was here at that meeting knows who the person was. It's not secret. I'm not gonna make it. But two other things. On the master plan. The master plan is a guiding document for the next 5 years. And I wonder if it's important to include some language in the master plan, as a review, about some of the other emerging land uses that are not necessarily approved right now, but we want to consider over the next 5 years. And those are things like accessory dwelling units, short-term rentals, perhaps smaller houses, or my favorite, which is agriculture. You might not even know what that is, but that's what I'm trying to do, actually. So I wonder if it's important to get those things into the master plan, or whether if they're omitted from the master plan, does that mean that in some sense we can't pursue those things because the master plan is going in a different direction? I don't want the master plan to be misinterpreted when it comes out. And about the Westchester Farmstead, I'll be really quick, but I understand it's our voluntary decision, I think, whether we want to sign this amendment to the agreement. Can we negotiate with them to get something that we want too? Now this is going to sound like a long shot maybe, but for a long time, I've been advocating that we pursue mothballing our water tower or selling the system to Chelsea. Can we get them to agree that they would accept Chelsea's water rather than ours? It says in there that Sylvan, it says in the consent judgment that Sylvan Township has the obligation to provide water service to them. Something very close to that. Now, I know it's a long, I know we're way past talking about mothballing the water, but, or could we get something else out of it that we want, right? Maybe something else.
Thank you,
I'm
Patrick.
definitely done that.
You done that, okay. Any other comments? Yes.
Hi, Sandy Edward. For the last 31 years, I have worked at Scioto Township as their chief financial officer. I'm currently the deputy treasurer / deputy supervisor. My point in this is I have seen a lot of development and development agreements in the last 31 years. In all of that time, as every project has come into that township, the developer pays to put the pipe in the ground, not the township. This township and us taxpayers was already hosed once by Norfolk. And I was looking for some document that said exactly what it is that they're looking for, other than their handout again. So that they can increase and make more money, increase the number of units and make more money. In 31 years, the only development agreement I have ever seen where the township reimbursed the person who put the pipe in the ground was if they upsized the pipe for future development beyond their borders. And in fact, that case was the WISD property when it went in Scioto Township. WISD needed water and sewer to that property. The township asked them if they would be willing to increase the size of the pipe for the future development, which if you go down in that area, which is now uplands and ravines and a few others. And then as the tap fees were sold within the uplands, we took that money and we paid back WISD for the difference in the price between the cost of the pipe they put in versus what they would have put in. It wasn't to benefit them. It was only to benefit other properties that would come along that the township would then get tap fees for. So to agree to pay Norfolk back so they can make more money, somebody is going to have to explain that one to Lucy because she ain't getting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, and I just want to say, it is an exercise in restraint for me to not want to, I mean, I want to respond to everyone. The restraint is not to, and it's not easy. But again, this is the public comment. This is the direction. I want to go and have meetings with all of you and talk about all of these things. And we will get to it here in the packet, but I really appreciate all of your comments. I appreciate you coming out tonight. And hopefully all of your answers your questions will be answered, or we will have questions and we will table and move forward in a thoughtful way. So thank you all for coming out tonight and your comments. And if there's no other comments, then we'll move forward with the agenda. Okay. All right. So now we have the consent agenda, which contains the minutes, the bills, correspondence, and various reports.
Kurt moves to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Rod seconds.
Thank you. A motion by Kurt, supported by Rod. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Then we have approval of the agenda It says consent or regular agenda. I have one item that I would like to add. It is a board of review appointment. I'm gonna pass, well, that goes to Sandy. Kurt, just to add to your packet, and I'd like to add this, it got neglected, but it needs to be on our agenda, so I would like to add this, to the end of the agenda, board of review appointments. Maybe want to press that, we can get to that.
I will move to approve the regular agenda as amended.
Second.
Thank you, Kurt and Rob. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, unfinished business. The first item on here is quotes for the replacement of basement doors. And this has been kicking around for a few months. Rod had gotten one quote, which was over $7,000, I believe, and then the second quote came, I think, late, maybe when we were discussing it last time. I'm not sure everyone had a chance to see that emailed quote. But it was significantly less. Yeah, I think it was 25. So I'm not sure, I think, we had the two quotes, and I think our intention was that we would have liked to have had more. And I don't know if you went out and looked for any more. Okay, I think Susan Gilby had said she looked for a couple people and didn't have any success. So do we want to, I will look for that email, because Rob, I don't know if that had ever been provided to the board at one point.
Last time, maybe. And then it got, I mean, you were here the last time, so it had been time before. It was provided, and then,
Yeah,
one that's still on the third.
yeah, we wanted a third. Right. And then we weren't able to find it. I don't know where that was. I thought for sure I brought it, but it didn't end up being in our packet. Neither one of them ended up being in there. So without that information, it's a little difficult. I will say I reached out to the troopers downstairs and I asked if they ever budget money for detachment upkeep. And they said that they would give us $1,000 towards replacing the door down there. So we'll have that when we decide. But it looks like that information is in the packet today. So I don't know if we can move forward without having those.
Rod can make a motion. And with a recommendation. Move to second. Then we decide if we need more information. We want to go with what Rod recommends. I saw the original quote.
And then the other
But
quote
not the
came
second
from
one.
the gentleman you knew. And that was the one that. I really preferred about it. It was.
But I hope here. Well, it's just one copy of it, and then we're on the back, but, yeah, for the township, side to install a new panic door and strike on the existing doors would be $1,100. For the state police side to install new solid door hinges, strikes, door sweeps, threshold, closer, weather strip, and panic bar would be $3,395. So it's a total of $4,495 for both of the doors. Is that what we're understanding?
So one's a repair and the other is a replace.
Yeah,
The way I understand.
they,
Well,
only one of them said, you don't want to replace this door, it doesn't need to be replaced.
but
This is
just,
what I recommend you do. And that was the push bar. Because we can't put a deadbolt on, it's against the code. because then people can't get out of it. So that was his solution, where nobody else said that. Even the third party that did come out, that never gave us a quote, said, it wouldn't say that, oh yeah, we replaced the doors. So two companies said they replaced the doors, and the third guy was honest enough to say, you don't need to replace those doors.
So, and this is for the doors that are in the weight room.
Yeah.
Correct? And then the doors, the door in the back that goes to the detachment is the complete repair. So the one directly below us would be the, not doing the whole door, just doing the strike bar there. Okay, so that would be one whole door over here and one here. These are doors. Correct. Right. Right.
I guess, for as long as this thing's going on, I'll make a motion that we accept Maine's Construction LLC in the amount of $4,495 to do, replace one door and repair the other door.
I will second.
Motion by Rod, supported by Kurt. Discussion?
Do we have any references for any of these?
The Maine's Construction has done a ton of work for the guest.
Okay, he came recommended by Kurt.
Kurt's worked with them for a number of years.
Okay.
Well, and my other question is, did we budget for this? I don't believe that we budgeted for this.
Initially, we did,
Yeah,
and it just kept rolling over.
well, so we didn't budget anything for this year for this. I mean, we didn't, I don't believe we did. I think this kind of came up when, I mean, it came up kind of as a surprise, felt like as a surprise to us. We were saying, oh my gosh, we look at, and truly the doors need repair, but I don't think we budgeted for this amount of money. And so then.
I
you
would
know,
feel better if you knew where we can find that in the budget. Not budget for.
Right. Right. I mean, do we have this money somewhere else that we can budget, or is this something that is like an emergency and we have to do, and we'll do a budget amendment? But we did a really great job of coming together with almost a balanced budget this year. I think we were 200 off. So we don't have this amount of fluff in there. We would be taking it from somewhere else, or at the end of the year, taking it from the general fund if we didn't have that money budgeted somewhere else. And the other option is waiting until we do our budget and plan it for the spring, but that's also months away.
Is it a safety or code violation?
No, the windows downstairs are cracked. And there's a couple other issues that I won't get into.
And I think they didn't approach us about it. It was just something that you saw or something.
Right.
So it's not like the police came and
The
said,
original
we
detective
need
and I
this.
talked about that, yes.
Okay.
And if the troops are gonna give us 1,000, that's possible less than that.
It's still $4,000. No, we want to choose for here in our township.
Is it a COVID issue?
But if this is not an emergency, it's something that we have to do now, then it would make sense to me that we wait until the budget for it. Until.
I think if I talked about the other issues.
Even just because we award a contract to somebody, I mean, how long ago did you submit
And
that?
this is for late September.
Yeah. This one wasn't that long.
Yeah.
Because we have to wait until they can work us into their schedule. And they
Mhm.
schedule out to who knows when, probably a lot, since there's so few people to do it.
Yes.
I'd be interested in doing a budget amendment and just moving on it right now, because they could all be abducted by aliens. Because it's been hard to find somebody who can do this kind of work.
Any more discussion, motion?
No,
made.
any more, I was gonna say, any more discussion? Thanks, Kurt. Any more discussion? And there's been a motion, so no more discussion. We'll take a vote. So the motion was Rod, Rod supported by Kurt. So I was, I guess we can just do a voice vote. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
The next item is information from the planning commission regarding the master plan update. And I think this might have been on last month, but I wasn't here and Kurt wasn't here, and so we moved it a little bit to here, so.
So this is just what I said last month, only they weren't here. But I looked on the website today and I'm happy to say that all of the documents that describe the master plan process are on there, so you can look it up for yourself. One of them is from the state of Michigan, so it's kind of hard to read. The other one is from the Michigan Township Association, which is a little bit easier to read. And then one is like a half a page, which kind of is the Cliff's Notes version of the steps that have to be taken. So from what I understand, one of the first things that we need to do is hire a consultant to help us. So when the master plan was done 5 years ago, a consultant was used, and I wasn't here, so this is just what people are telling me. That they were using the same consultant that was used maybe in Sharon Township and maybe another township, who they were all working on the same thing. So it was really helpful to use a firm that was understood doing township master plans. So I don't think anybody is working on their master plan right at that time. So the first thing that has to be decided is how to go or who to select. I just went to a Zoom conference at Michigan Township Association on November 30th on how to write a request for proposal to hire a consultant. One of the things they said was, if you have somebody in mind, just hire them, because the process can take a very long time and it can be very expensive. The city of Grand Rapids is doing their master plan this year. They budgeted $1 million. So we're like nowhere near that. I thought that earlier in the year, when we were talking about the budget, I thought I had requested $7,500 for the master plan, but I can't find it listed at all. But I think that we have $7,500 for our master plan. And this will, and then when we determine who we want to hire, then we explain to them in the request what we want from them. And there's some things they have to get from us, like digital files that they can work on. And, whether or not we want them to attend like an open house, or if they can only be on a Zoom meeting with people to ask them questions. Those are the things that we have to do before we write the proposal to whomever we're going to select to do that. So the first thing we have to do is get a consultant to help us. And by putting together the request for proposal, that will then help us determine what the timeline is going to be. And that's something that has to be included in the proposal as well. So that's the first thing we have to do.
So how do we pay for it? Is it budgeted for? Is it?
That was just what I said. I thought I asked for $7,500.
Yeah, you did.
Okay,
That's
so
not,
we have $7,500.
I don't think that would cover it.
Well,
But
I don't know. I've not been through master plan before, so.
We will go to the next budget.
Yeah, definitely. Then we can budget,
discussion.
right, budget more, our new fiscal year will start April 1st. So this will be from now, if we haven't spent any of that money, master plan money, then that money is there.
Right.
And then we can consider any further funding for next budget year.
do you know who did the master plans for the surrounding areas? It seems like that'd be a good.
Workman, but that was 5 years ago. I don't know who's working on a master plan now. But at that time, it was Carlisle Workman.
City of Chelsea or Lyman Township or Linden or Grass Lake.
Lyman just had a survey out like 3 weeks ago. I found it in the paper where they were, you could scan the QR code. And I did ask them for their survey, but they're gonna get it to me. Just so I get an idea of what other verbiage is being used in surrounding municipality.
So what were they were, they had a.
They had an ad in the paper in the Sun Times
Uh-huh.
saying that they're gonna, redo their master plan, and there was a little QR code you
Yeah.
can scan that would take you to
take
their
it to their
service.
master plan, right.
It was a nice big advertisement in the Sun Times,
Mhm.
and I have not forgot it, but.
Oh, I can see already things are gonna be different than it was 5 years ago.
Right.
Because they weren't doing that like.
Right.
Right, yeah, yeah,
So we just,
Yes.
if you can find out who they're using.
we could, yeah.
And then I think what would be important is what's in the survey. Survey questions you could sway, what you're looking for based on the survey questions you've asked. So that'll be really important to get feedback from residents as well, even what we should be asked. So,
I want to look at the survey. So the survey was, I'll look into.
yeah,
that. That's-
I did ask, I
yeah,
asked Dwayne, like, if
Yeah,
he was going to get it from, because they have a new clerk now, so. he needs to
Yeah.
have her, yeah,
Right.
to me.
right. Interesting. Yeah, I think Carlisle Warman is pretty much the go-to people. I feel like when we see them come from other municipalities, our neighboring townships say, hey, we're updating our master plan. It's from them. We used them last time. And it was a good process. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of opportunities. They were, to come here and to write on the sticky notes, and it felt like they did a decent job, but so. Scott, I see you back there with your hand up, but this is it's a sticky wicket, because when I start,
It just interject that you maybe recommend a visionary. Before you do a master plan, they have a meeting, so everybody could voice what they'd like to see or the problems with the last one. And then I have had a conversation with Carlisle Workman. You may want to hear it first hand from them, but I do not believe that they would look for us.
interesting, okay.
Can I make a little process comment? Not, not a content comment, but I'm going to all the planning commission meetings. The plans of the planning commission have been to do a limited review of the master plan
Right,
and not a complete overhaul of it. So I don't know who makes that decision, which way it's gonna go. But what I'm hearing in the discussion here is trending a little bit more toward a wider net. Right? I don't know if that's your intention. I don't know if the board or the planning commission makes that decision.
I think it's the planning commission, yeah, so it wouldn't be the board, right, okay, so I'm just speaking in generalities, whether it's a broad one or a short one or whoever. Whatever we determine is what we're gonna put in the planning commission will.
All follows the
Let
same
us know.
steps.
I think before any of it can start, we have to ask the planning commission to take it.
Right, exactly. So I think Sandy's here as the liaison from the planning commission, bringing these things forward. Well, and so you're looking for direction from the board to tell the planning commission, you have the authority to
Yeah.
hire a planner
Yes,
or hire someone, a consultant,
yes,
to help you put this together.
Yeah.
I see here also on the agenda sheet, it looks like the planning commission is wondering how the board feels about Pierce Road, that maybe that should be looked at.
yes.
Yes, and right,
We're asking,
Right.
are these things that you want us to do?
yes. I mean, and of course, I'm only one of 5 people here. Everyone else can, but I think all of the things that are listed here would be things that I would like to see included or considered also.
Okay,
And then it's in the minutes, because we discussed it last time, but I referenced the letter that we received last time and just asked that we take a look at maintaining a 2-acre minimum in all areas outside of the Lake Districts and urban area. Obviously, commercial and
That was
industrial,
the thing.
all residential areas.
Yeah, there are some 1-acre parcels. Is that considered urban up by like, on McKinley? I hear what you're saying though, and then definitely, if you see all these notes, and this will just, be a process that we could.
that's a process.
It's a process. So did you get Amanda's, thoughts on,
In the last, I think.
it was already in the last one,
Right.
okay. We might as well, because if we don't, then it'll be a whole nother month. It's the speed of government that we wouldn't be able to do anything. So I'd rather motion and not need it than,
I'll
have
make a
that.
motion to have Sandy take us to the planning commission to get the process started.
Kurt will second.
All right. All right. Do we want to say in the motion, would you like to say, with the authority to hire a consultant and get the process started? Would that, just because that's clear then, would you be agreeable to that amended motion? Okay,
So.
okay, motion
Make
to,
a motion to have Sandy take it to the planning commission to get the ball rolling and give her the authority to hire a consultant to get us started.
that's still, okay, perfect. All right, thank you. Okay, motion by Rod, supported by Kurt. Any other discussion? All right, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. The next is the consideration of the board and staff training by Susan Radwin that we talked about for a little while, and I know we had some time to think about it, and I had offered some of the deputy supervisor salary that I haven't spent yet this year for this endeavor. And I think this would be really beneficial to everybody here. We can start out the new year. We got some new people, all collectively together on a good foot. Since I've been here, we have never had any sort of a training or, sometimes people say, does your board go on retreats? And I'm like, wow, no, but, this would be 4 hours. I think it's actually 3.5 that she said, and I think it would be a good use of our time and money. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the proposal from Susan Radwin dated October 3rd, 2022 in the amount of $1,500.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion support. Is there discussion? Okay, so we'll vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Nay, opposed, say nay. Thank you. Okay, motion carries. And I will say also, I was anticipating that this might pass and had sent a doodle poll around to the staff and the board members and have narrowed down a few dates. I think it was December 15th, 20th, January, the 10th was out, the 25th. And I think everybody on the board actually commented on that as well. I was sort of envisioning tonight that we might narrow in on one of those dates.
Yeah.
I would love to have done this in December. I'm not sure that's gonna happen. I mean, we could do, yeah. Yeah, I would have to look again, but I think the 15th,
I'm looking for.
the 15th and the 20th. Those could work. That could work. And then the other date that was out there was January 25th, and that feels like a really long time away.
The 15th of December.
Yeah. That's a no.
Then in January, I have a copy with my, and I'm looking at that copy. Because at the same time, we've been meeting earlier.
Okay. Well, we've approved this. Do we fine tune this date, not during,
I think.
the
We can do
public's
that.
time, and we
Yeah,
can just,
absolutely.
we've approved it tonight.
Yeah.
We'll just fine tune the date.
Yes.
We'll waste their time on that right now, so, okay. All right, I'll get that. Thank you for that. Okay, so now we're under new business, and the first one is the big one tonight, Norfolk Development First Amendment to Consent Judgment. And our attorney is here tonight, Rob Thal. There he is, thank you. Rob has muted, or if he muted.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
co-host.
He's,
Okay.
oh, great.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
It's better, you can hear him. Do you want to do a little history on this, Rob, or do you want me to do it? This is something that I think has been, you know, we've talked about in different configurations for a couple years now through different supervisors and, different things.
Well, I just think, just to frame it a little bit, I think you have to understand that the board can't just sit down and discuss this. The only way that the board has discussions regarding these things is in an open meeting, unless there's legal issues that we need to go into a closed session for. So when people say it's coming forward and it looks like this is the first opportunity for the board to take a look at it, to discuss it, but this is the way it happens. You have to have open discussion on it as a board. And so what it is what you have kind of brings things forward to what Westchester is looking at, what the way they want to proceed with their development. And, you know, certainly we have a consent agreement that has a certain design. They want to do a different design. They want to add 31 properties, I believe it is. And one of the issues that we're dealing with is the fact that when they bought their taps originally, you know, did they buy something that's designed to provide them proper service for their development? We're required to bring the water service to their property, and they're then required, they would provide their own infrastructure. There were questions raised by the township as to whether there was sufficient pressure within their system, that the system we were bringing to the property was maybe potentially not designed properly to provide that development and all those purchased taps proper pressure to that system. Now, in doing that, there was original discussions regarding putting in a booster, and they were going to give us the property, and you know, they wanted us to pay for the booster. Now, I know that a water study I haven't had a chance to even look at it, but I think something came out from our water consultant just this evening. So, I mean, certainly I think we need to look at that, but as I understand it, and I understand, like, normally you're not going to pay for the infrastructure for a developer. That's on them. But there are legal issues here as to what we committed to when we took their tap money or take their tap money for providing a service to their property, and whether it's sufficient to provide that service. Now, maybe there is no issue with pressure, and they kind of thought that there wasn't. We were thinking that there was. You know, that's an issue that maybe the consultant addresses in his letter or in his review. I don't know, but the basis is that you know, we have to provide the pressure that we committed to provide so that they could do the development they're doing. Now, if they're adding to it and that's creating the problem, well, that's on them. But I think the issue was that you know, it might not have had sufficient pressure to the 331 parcels or units that we had originally consented to allow to go in there. And that can be on us. You know, or if we just say no, that can be a lawsuit, you know, so you know, take that for as it is. But certainly we were probably I wouldn't say threatened, but you know, there is that issue. I mean, it's in a consent agreement from litigation that started with. So I don't think that they would hold back if they thought that we were required to bring them sufficient pressure, and we're not bringing that pressure. So I think the developer is there tonight. I mean, certainly they can address why they think that we should pay for an upsized line, because that's what you know, pay for it with tap fees, but still pay for it. You know, maybe the developer can address why they think that we should do that, but my understanding is it's based upon what was originally our issue with maybe there wasn't sufficient water pressure to the properties. Now, again, I haven't seen the report from our consultant, and I think I need to see that, but you know, this is for you to take a look at this agreement. And if there's questions, concerns, we can have our consultant look at the answer questions, or we can go back and you know, make alterations, but that's, you know, I look for the board for comments and concerns and questions.
Go first, if you want. Rob, back in, oh, let's see here. I've got a report from Infrastructure Alternatives back in 2017. So we're going back 5 years. And this is all in agreement with the consent judgment. The developer provides us with plans. We do engineering reviews. And if we have no issues, it's there's a timetable, 21 days. If we don't have any issues, it's considered approved. If we have issues, we got to let the developer know. At that time, Infrastructure Alternatives said there's a pressure problem when with certain fire flows, you're going to have water pressures that are below what's considered good engineering. In the Infrastructure Alternatives proposal, it also gave a couple of ways on how to fix it. It said, well, if you take where you currently have an 8-inch line on the developer's system, if you increase that to a 12-inch line, the computer modeling will show that everything's okay. So that was back in 2017. In July of this year, Midwest Consulting started reviewing the phase 4. And they made a comment in there that the hydraulic model analysis by IMEG, so now this is a second engineering firm looking at it, shows the need for some of the water main on the Norfolk system to be increased from 8-inch to 12-inch. So now we've got 2 engineering firms saying, you know, if you do this, then you'll meet the requirements. I don't know why it took so long for IMEG to get us the report. I've been asking for it for a long time. Midwest Consulting seemed to have it in July, and it showed up on my computer about 20 minutes ago. But now that it's here, I think what we need to do is follow the consent judgment that says we need to notify them that they have not passed the engineering reviews and we can't proceed on with phase 4. What really concerns me more is there's this first amendment to the consent judgment, and I just learned that we were even considering this probably Thursday evening when I got the board packet. I don't understand who authorized, who took this project on, and we could have discussed this in a work session. And instead, it looks like somebody's already decided to get legal involvement and have first amendments drawn up. I mean, the cart is way ahead of the horse. But, you know, that being as it is, when I read through it and I get to page 4, I believe it is, and it talks about water services. You know, that's where it says that the township's going to agree to fund this. And the reason the township would do that is so that we don't have to put in a boost pump on our system. Well, there's no need for a boost pump on our system. Our 12-inch main at their property line will provide them with all the water pressure they need, but they need to do some changes on their side. So I don't understand why we would pay for the changes on their side. For example, we have a 12-inch main down the road. If you hook a 1-inch garden hose onto it, that's not going to supply 330 homes. This is not going to work. And you've got 2 engineering companies that have said the 8-inch line is not going to work. So why on earth would we be paying for this? And furthermore, I'd like to know who's been sort of championing this and working with legal to to get us to this point. Why didn't we discuss this in the work session? I mean, this is way, way, way having the cart before the
Well,
horse.
and I want to say that this has been a discussion point for literally years, going back to when you were supervisor, previous supervisors, because Westchester came in at a point and said, we want to make changes, and we said, we understand, we would like, even though it's under consent judgment, we don't have a lot to say about it, we wanted to have the record, so 10, 20 years from now, somebody comes in and looks at Westchester and looks at our plans and says, that doesn't look right, we have a paper trail, we can show that we've been, looking at the reviews when they come in. Now, I understand, I remember in 2020, when I was clerk, there was discussions, there were conversations, meetings about this and their configuration changes. So this is not coming up just now, this has been simmering for years.
You know, what's coming up right now is that we're gonna pay for it.
But
We've
we're
been
not,
saying
this is
for-
just for the board to discuss. So Mr. Thal sent this to me, he's been talking with Alan Green over a long period of time. This is what came forward. No one here, and I think I had put approve on there only because I consider approving, I'm not championing this is not me. But this is, like Mr. Thal said, we have to discuss these things in an open session. So there's gonna be some point, which is the first point in time, that we have heard this, and that point is now. And so we have opportunities, we can say, we don't like this, nothing's being railroaded or pushed down anybody's throat. This is presented, and we are 5 voices in the community who will say, we don't like this, we wanna go back and do something different. We have the ability and the power to do that, that's our job.
All right, so
Right.
where we are today is our engineer says this doesn't work. You need to
Well-
increase
Right.
your 8-inch line to a
Right,
12
but
inch
the
line.
IA thing is not relevant anymore.
No, that's,
because
I think,
it's a
report that just
I
came.
understand, that one I agree.
That
with.
one-
Right,
so
but
our
the reference IA.
Our engineer has just told us that doesn't work. The
Right,
consent judgment says you now have 21 days that they can either disagree with it and we move on. But if we do nothing, we need to follow this consent judgment.
right, and
That's
I
what we should
believe.
be working on with Mr. Fall,
Mhm.
is drafting a letter that goes to Norfolk that says your system doesn't work as designed per our engineering review. And you can either disagree and we can get a third engineering company in, or we can get their engineers and our engineers together and we can say, what assumptions do you have in the model? That would be a way to work through this, not this amendment.
And when I-
Can I just make a point, just so,
Please.
please maybe go back,
You identify yourself, please?
Sean here, Norfolk Development. The system doesn't have enough pressure, which was identified in 2017. It's on a long dead end line. It was misengineered from the beginning of it. The normal inside our development is all 8-inch water mains. We looked at, what is the solution? And that was a booster station that the township would pay to put proper pressure in the system. After the engineers looked through that, it came that the pressure is only at a fire flow pressure where it's low, not domestic water there. So rather than putting a mechanical system in, it's a booster station that may, hopefully never runs ever. Hopefully there's never a structure fire out there. They never do that. So rather than putting a station in that the bearings, everything can wear out, the engineers looked at it and said, okay, what is an alternative to doing the booster station that's required? And it was putting the 8-inch line or 12-inch lines throughout the development, which in a normal development would never, you would never put 12-inch lines in. So the reason they said to the 12-inch lines was in lieu of the booster station. That way you're taking mechanical pressure or the mechanical side out of it. And also if the project is water ever moves to the north and goes to, used to be gone, I don't remember what it is now, that you're upsizing the system to kind of like that. Man, I can't remember what your name was, but very similar to the ISD. You're upsizing it for future development. If you ever tap into the city system, which I'm not saying you ever will or there, but if that connection ever came, you have that upside system. But if you had the proper pressure that we paid for, we would just put 8-inch lines in there. The problem is you don't have proper pressure there. So in lieu of doing that, we agreed, hey, we'll use tap fees to pay for that increase. So the township won't have to pay out of pocket
to put that in. So when we're saying that the township paying, we're paying for all our infrastructure. The only difference is
Right,
the
so,
increase from the 8 to the 12.
so there's the disagreement. The 12-inch line that the township has up to your property line, we, the township, are saying is adequate.
Your engineers are saying it's not.
No, the engineers are saying your system is not adequate.
Because
Not ours.
there's not enough pressure in your line to give us adequate pressure.
That's not what they're saying. So there's the disagreement.
Well, I mean, we can agree to disagree.
Right. So that's probably, you know, an engineering analysis that should be conducted,
And I believe it was done.
Yeah.
That was done.
not in that context. They've looked at it and they've said, your system needs to be upgraded, and you're saying, no, the Sylvan system needs to be upgraded. So how do we resolve that?
Yes, we go to court.
Well, I just said.
I guess, that is what, you know, we paid for 330 taps. To have proper pressure.
You agree that if you hook the 1-inch line off our 12-inch, that wouldn't meet your needs on your, so it is a system on your side. Our system is doing exactly what it was designed to do.
It is not.
There you go, there's the disagreement. So
Right.
we,
And I think that's been, yeah.
so a
right.
work session,
Wow.
maybe looking at hiring an engineering firm to figure this out, is it their problem or ours, is the way to go, not this.
Right, and I understand, and I'm feeling a little defensive, that I didn't personally draw that up and champion that.
I'm gonna
And
just,
so-
one more
Yeah.
small, the redoing of the layout was somewhat independent of this booster station, or the booster stuff, because the booster was never included in the original consent judgment. But it came, you know, once we put the first phase in 2017, your engineers came back and said, hey, there's not enough pressure here, and they ran their modeling.
No, they said there are multiple ways to address this issue. The easiest is to increase the line size. It's also possible to put in a booster station, but that's not the best way to go. The easiest way is to fix some of your cross connections and increase line sizes. And we sat on that because we were waiting for this phase 4 to come in. So we did nothing with that, but now we're at the point where we have.
I won't say the phase 4 did nothing. And again, I just want to go back 2 steps, that the layout, you know, was one thing. And we can, if we want to go, and we can get with Rob there, we can pull that section out of the consent judgment. Because that section wasn't in the original one. So we can pull that out, and we can go to battle on that section.
Well,
Versus the layout side of it. We just thought it was easier to cover everything at one time.
Well, there's a lot more issues in here than just water. I mean, that's just the biggest one. You know, the other issue we have is, why would we agree to this apartment complex if we don't have the ability to send it to Leone? We'd be crazy to do that. We should be saying, no, we cannot support it at this time. You know, I see that as another big issue. Until that's resolved.
Um,
One thing I've heard quite a few times is, one thing you don't do in a system is dead end.
Right.
And it should all be moved rather than dead ended.
And that's in Ted Erickson's.
Which would help a lot.
Which I don't know if the original bypass, you know, I wasn't around, I mean, I was around, but not, you know, when we bought the property, the sewer and the water was at it. When there was the original bypass, the 52 bypass, I don't know if those, the north side and the south side were supposed to loop there, but engineering standards would never put a dead end line like was put in there.
And just that I understand, our system is built like a C, where there's a dead end here, and then there's a dead end here, just so that the public knows that's, so there's no looping, and then if there was looping, that would
That would eliminate
increase the
yeah,
pressure, but partly it's our system.
That's on 2 giant dead end lines.
So the consent judgment says that we will do engineering reviews, and if there's any disagreement, that we're gonna notify them.
Okay.
So that's what we should be doing.
Yep, and Mr. Thal is on the call right now, so if you'd like to speak.
And I don't disagree with that. You guys
What,
have done that. I mean, we've gone through 3 phases, we're on our 3rd phase, 4th phase of this now. That's been in the consent judgment from day 1.
and you're saying it hasn't, not something that has been done in the past, is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, we've been working with MCI, you know, for a couple of pages, we worked with MCI, I mean, they give review comments, our engineer fixes them and we send back, and there's takes sometimes 2-3 months to go through an engineering one. Which happened in phase 1, phase 2.
Right, so following the consent judgment, we need to officially notify them that our engineering is saying there's an issue and we're not approving the phase 4 drawings based on the consent judgment.
So I will go to our attorney because that feels like a legal thing, and I'm not gonna comment on that because it has to do with the consent judgment. So I would like to ask Mr. Thal, or, you know, I'm gleaning, and we kind of suspected this from the beginning, that this would maybe be a work session item for us, that we could come together. I would personally be interested, Sean, if you wanted to come back at that work session and do a presentation, because I'm interested. I know you're suggesting other types of housing. I can picture what a ranch duplex looks like. I can picture a townhouse duplex. I don't know what a cottage home is. So even just to sort of talk about maybe what you're wanting to do, I don't know if that's fruitful, if that would be informational to the board. But have a work session where we could talk about things. Our attorney would be there. If he's in agreement with you on that, that's, you know, I'm not an attorney, so we could come together and have some questions. And then if you wanted to come in, and even if you just answered my college question, I would appreciate that. Although we probably have more. And
And additionally, a lot of the work that we do with engineering firms and MCI, all that gets charged back to the developer through the trust and agency account. And Norfolk has not been keeping up with those charges. And our procedures say that they need to be paid in advance. And when they get into a certain percentage of being out of compliance, but we continually seem to have them owing us money, which is not a good relationship. That's not how we should be doing business.
I know Amanda has been sending letters, and I think they brought it up, but failed to recognize she had a second sentence in there about bringing it up to 10,000. I don't think it's been a problem with Norfolk when we do send those bills. They're, you know, so right. So that was just the one. But I think if we can let them know that, yeah, those engineering fees are hefty. Yeah. So yeah, those are all, those continuing being passed on and paid pretty timely as far as I know, other than the last situation. And they were paid, and then we asked for an additional 10,000, so we wouldn't be in arrears again. And I think that's the situation you're waiting for. So right now they're even, and then we'll get a little bit more from them because we know we'll still have charges coming.
Well, we're not even in arrears because I did 10,000 I asked for, which is with Nancy.
Okay.
Oh,
So now we're about $9,000 in arrears again.
because we're invoices and the invoices.
Because we do
And I have to make
And I don't
I'll
know,
look at that.
I don't know if the time that Rob Fowler has spent on this is something we're charging to him, or if we're gonna absorb that cost.
And I guess what I heard from you initially, that would be a concern is saying, who's authorizing Rob to work on this? Because it costs money. You know,
Right.
who's directing him to do this if it's not a board discussion?
Well, look, I mean, maybe Rob wants to answer that. Maybe it was me. I'm not sure. I feel like this thing has been around, Rob, since, and you've been our attorney now through a couple supervisors, literally before me, Mr. Kosick, Mr. Brooks. This has been something that's been around for a long time. So, you know, in terms of whether there are fees, attorney fees, I believe those would be payable as, you know, engineering, legal, all of
I would
those.
expect those to come out of escrow.
Right, I would imagine so, because
I-
there's time that
So have you read Ted Erickson's most recent report then that came out just
I have,
tonight? You have?
I have, yes.
that
And
came,
what did it,
yeah.
did it say that did it address what end of the system the problem is at? Or what part of the system the problem is at?
Yes.
And his says that the problem is within the Westchester system.
His report says that the issues can be resolved by Westchester increasing their 8-inch line to 12-inch line.
Rather than putting a booster station in.
He does mention that there's discussion about a booster station, but you have to assume that the original engineering design was done correctly. You know, otherwise we would put something bigger than a 12-inch line down that road. So you have to assume that the original engineering that was done is sized properly for the development that was going to go in.
And I think that's the problem right there. And
Yeah.
we can have the engineering do it. Is it anytime? I'm not an engineer, but we'll have them do it, you know. This original system wasn't designed properly. Which again, they
Right.
they originally said, you know, hey, you gotta put a booster station in, and then they looked at it and said, you know, hey, how can we not put a mechanical system in here? And so, well, geez, if you upside everything in here, which again, normally you would never do that, the subway didn't have proper system. They said that would be an alternative.
But when you say the system was designed wrong, if what we brought to the development was appropriate, because we have a 12-inch line.
You're on a giant dead end line. Maybe it should have been a 24-inch line you got to the site.
I would have told them it's the biggest.
I mean, they have. Sitting Arbor has all sorts of. So. That's the point. For the Ann Arbor. Oh, it is, so. I just replaced 20-inch valve the other day. There you go, okay. So they're bigger than 12-inch line. Yeah. So, you know, this is on a, I can't remember, we're a 4 or 5 mile dead end. Line there. I mean, it's. Really 12 feet or so, but it's looped. Yeah, we did this already, you know, but everything's looped. I mean, this whole system that runs up there is on a giant. Most systems are looped, but I don't know how Chelsea would loop theirs without, or we would loop it without somehow getting Chelsea there. Okay. Or you go cross country and come up by the Sylvan crossings or whatever. Which like I said, it's a big C system. It's not in good design for it.
And what's your feelings on the Leone issue? You know, our hands are tied, we can't.
Sure, and we understand that. We've been working with Kathy and the other developer, and I think some developers in Grass Lake there. You know, it's our understanding that by April or March, April, that, you know, again, we've got multiple meetings with Eagle that their plan will be operational by March, April. We're not gonna be ready to go behind this, so timing wise for us, it doesn't affect much.
Okay.
That affects more the guys down the street here. Than it does us.
Excuse me.
So I guess, how do you want me to proceed? Do you want me to do a letter to the, if you're telling me that our engineers say the problem is within their system with pressure, then do you want me to do a letter to them? Is that what you're directing me to do? Notify them?
So would that be appropriate in the consent judgment? I mean, you're the attorney. I would just ask you, do you think is that something that?
I don't have it in front of me, but
Yeah.
I can review it. If it's the appropriate action, I can take that.
Hey, Rob, this is Sean. Does it make sense at all to pull that section out and have that section a separate agreement?
Well, I mean, I think the board still seems like they want to know a lot more about what your phases are and what your plans are, it sounds like.
Yeah.
As a board, so maybe you need a work session. I would think we could pull that out. That's fine, but it sounds like the board still has a lot of questions as to what your proposal is.
That's fine.
But I don't think we'd be able to approve it until we make that determination. Because we can't approve it if there's not going to be sufficient pressure to it.
Right, which was going back to the original consent judgment.
Right. So I don't know if the board would want to have a work session with you to go over what your plan is. And then we can find out, supervisor can have some discussions with our engineer, you can have discussions with your engineer and see. Obviously, you know what the issue is.
Sure.
That we feel that the problem lies in your side of it, not our side of it.
Yeah, we really need to have a work session on this
Right.
with
I was gonna
Bob
say, I
Skull
think that's
involved.
very appropriate.
Yes,
Um,
definitely. And I believe Ted Erickson, and when he sent his report, I told him it was possible we'd have a work session and he was available to come to that meeting as well.
Yeah,
So do
and
we?
MCI, I mean, there's a letter
uh,
from July that has, you know, all kinds of things that MCI is recommending that needs to be changed on the plans that were submitted. I don't know if those have been done.
They are, and the NCI letters are, matter of fact, I think you just sent a couple of them. I mean, those are very typical stuff that our engineers.
Right, but I mean,
All right.
Are working on.
me as a board member having to vote on this, I don't have any documentation from Midwestern saying, yes, this is all been satisfactory result.
But and if I can, just real quickly, I think there's two things kind of going on here at the same time. One is, you know, they're working on, you know, so final engineering for phase 2 never goes in front of the board. It's just done administratively. Phase 1 never went in front of the board. The engineering is done administratively. So we work with MCI till she signs off, and it might have 5-6 iterations of going back and forth between our engineer and them. So what you're saying now is, I don't know what letter you're looking at, but it's probably 3 or 4 iterations, and there's probably 1 or 2 after that. But the board, the planning commission, or the board signs off on it. That is all handled administratively. So what you're seeing there is kind of the administrative side of it. What the board is looking at is the change of the overall development, the layout, the going from 330 single family homes to, you know, multiple single family duplexes, cottages there. And then the other thing that we brought into this amendment was the water issue. So that would be a board discussion too, but, you know, not to get, I hear what you're saying, but not to get into the weeds a little bit on these little things that, that's all handled administratively. You know, the board is looking at the overall layout of the site plan, changing from the original 330 units to what we're proposing. And then obviously the water side of it, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, I'm not, I always thought this would go through planning commission to review this. No, this board has to make the approvals for these phases and
That's not the way the consent judgment reads.
I've asked, you know, why isn't the planning commission reviewing all these things? Because they seem to be pretty technical. I mean,
I mean, just because, because it has a consent judgment.
so only the board, we're saying the same thing.
Only the board is because we're changing it. If we would have stayed with the original 330 units there,
Right.
this would have never come in front of the board.
So now that there are changes being made, I mean, I don't even see the drawings. You know, I have to, like, I go in Bob Skull's office, oh yeah, they dropped these off a month ago here, they're rolled up in the corner. I mean, if this board is gonna be making decisions, I shouldn't, you know, in a work session, be going through the drawings and.
That's why I suggest
Seeing what it is.
that he come and present to us what their phases are, what their plans are, what the changes are, what the housing, possibilities are. Because yeah, we want to know, we'd like to know what the changes are and. So, yeah.
What else? I didn't go-
Yeah, it's a consent agreement with the township board, so it's,
I've got them all here. We can go through them.
I think a work session is good. We got a big agenda tonight, but and Rob, I'm sorry, you said something, but if we.
no, it's a consent agreement. That's why it's in front of the board. I mean, it's been taken out of the hands of the planning commission as soon as you enter into a consent agreement. The consent agreement overrides all of that,
Right, that's what-
and it's a board determination.
So, Rob, if you look at page 5, section 5, that talks about engineering and other review procedures. And it's got some dates in there. So I think we need to document that, you know, as of the report that came out today, we have issues with the engineering review.
Are you talking about the contract or about the paper that we have?
You're saying the original.
The page
Which,
five,
Ron, I don't think you have that in front of you, correct? We don't have the original consent judgment? Yeah. Which if anybody wants that, I will make you a copy. I'm sorry, I meant to make copies of the original consent judgment. from 2011.
And they're available on the website as well. If you go to the minutes on demand, there's a folder on the left-hand side and it says judgments, and all 8 of our consent judgments are there. You should be able to find them and print them out. Let me know if you don't see it. It's on the minutes on demand page.
so I'm just trying to direct Rob to where I think this
Mhm.
falls.
Right,
Page
Yes.
five.
Page 5,
section 5, he said.
section, all right,
And other review procedures. And we want to make sure we're following the original consent judgment.
right.
Based on the report that came out today.
Yeah.
That's all I have. The other agenda item. Ted Erickson should be there too at that work session because we have to understand his model.
Right,
Like me looking at it, it looks like the pressure is lower at the water tower than it is out at Westchester Farms. The water usually doesn't flow from
Right.
a lower pressure to a higher,
right.
You know.
Yeah, he will absolutely be there.
so he needs to be there.
Yes, he will. And he agreed today that he would be happy to come to the meeting. So is that what the board is directing Rob to send a letter, or are we feeling that, we want to have a work session,
Not
or
just-
it's the work session first?
Rob needs to look at the consent judgment
Right,
and needs to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do per consent judgment. Rob may look at it and say, no, you don't. have
Yeah.
right, right, right. Right, I just want to make sure that he's clear, we're clear, on the direction we're giving him. I think we're all in agreement, we have the work session. So if we want to look at calendars right now, we can pick a couple of dates. I can throw them out there into the other interested parties, and or we can do it, we can do a doodle poll if it's something where Sean is gonna need to be there and other people.
What are you looking to do?
That's a great question. I mean, board, what are your feelings? When would you be ready to have a work session?
No, it's cost of prison, that means that she given us time.
I can't do the 19th, I could do the,
I say the week off.
yeah. The 20th, the 21st, or the 22nd, maybe sooner rather than closer to the.
Would you do this during the day or when you do it?
Well, that's a good question. Should we do it, would it be during the day or an evening?
Whenever you get Ted and Bob.
Yeah,
My guess is what those guys probably here.
that's what I'm thinking too.
20th.
So- When it was out for me during the day,
And it's in the day, it needs to be like, in the morning,
in the morning.
during our normal.
Yeah, I can do the
Right,
morning.
right. Yep. You could do the morning,
Yeah, I can do the morning.
Oh, the 20th?
Sure.
you do the morning on the 20th?
I just have to be out by 2.
I also we have other meetings that we have out there pending too with Donald Lisinski's office. I threw a whole bunch of dates out there, so I've a couple different points. I've got dates that could be flowing out there, so that might be difficult. Cause we are trying to meet with Donald Lisinski's office regarding the Leone situation. And I gave her a few dates that I could do. Do we want to tentatively say Tuesday, the 20th, and we can say, do you want to say 9:30 or 10? 9 is sometimes hectic because we walk in the door and it's. people are-
It's 9:30, sooner we can get going. the better.
Right, and then, right. So 9:30 on December 20th. Tentatively, I will keep everyone here in the loop and check with Bob Skull and Ted Erickson. Mr. Thal, is that a meeting you feel like you need to